Just 30,000-foot view right now, how would you even describe the nature of ICE arrests in Kansas City and surrounding areas?
The biggest surprise of this year is that I feel like we've seen HSI be used at arrest more often, that's a curveball for everybody. It seems like they're getting used to do these arrests because ICE is being expected to meet quotas that everyone knows are impossible. So we see HSI just messing up a lot. They don't seem to understand the whole thing about First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment, private property versus public property, the need for having a judicial warrant for certain kinds of arrest. So the famous incident was in February of this year at the El Potro raid in Liberty, Missouri. And it bothered a lot of people because they just came straight into a restaurant, and the person they were supposedly looking for wasn't even there, but they get 12 coworkers instead. So that matches a pattern that often worries the people about ICE arrest, where a collateral raid, right? The curveball is going to be with the bill finally taking effect. If they get more agents, would that increase their activity? So we're going to have to see. Yeah.
I mean, the funding got approved. It's just a matter of it happening, them making the hires. And, I think we've all seen this national push to make hires for ICE agents. Mm-hmm. How is your organization preparing for that potential influx, which we would assume would lead to more activity?
I mean, on one hand, we thought we'd have to prepare by October 10th, because originally that's when the bill was going to take effect. But actually, that's not how it played out because of confusing things we didn't quite predict. The government shutdown, halting how soon that bill would take effect. And so in some ways, what people thought would have to be the dramatic tipping point of being prepared for heavy it wasn't quite what people thought. That said, it's still a concern, the idea of more workers being hired to do more activity throughout the nation. So to that end, you can't completely control for that. What we can say for sure is that when they have these seasons of just more activity and being pressured to meet more quotas, you see them push boundaries more, sometimes in questionable ways or obviously are violating people's civil rights. Not in every case, but you tend to see that happen more often. So the local community can know, well, just document everything you see, knowing your First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment right, enabling you to do so, not to do anything more than that, don't interfere in the arrest, yada, yada. But do record. If they say back up, you back up and keep recording. Try to record in an intelligent way. You're not trying to make it about you. You're trying to just see what happened. You want to be able to let the video speak for itself. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Lenexa restaurant.
Toro Loco, yeah.
That story came out, and it was like not just what had happened, but also the interactions between agents and organizers who were on the ground. I think AIR had some level of representation there. And one of the things that I noticed about that interaction was, it did get a little bit more testy, and it was almost like as if whoever was there was infringing on the investigation. What is your response to that?
In trainings on knowing your rights and your rights to record, trainers are usually very clear. You're not really trying to interfere in the arrest. Back up and record, right? I think what's new this year across the whole country is I see more people get involved in wanting to know their rights and record than I've ever seen before, because people are genuinely concerned about how much ICE activity and HSI and CBP could just get out of hand. So a lot of people in the community want to show up. That also means sometimes you've had to check people to say, find a strategic way in how you do these things. So people who had prior experience with this work usually you learned over the years the hard lessons about these things. It's tempting to want to feel like you could do more to stop something now, but really playing the long game is better, because if civil rights abuses are happening, you're not going to stop that in the moment in most cases, but long term, if someone's arrested by that, by a civil rights abuse, disrespecting private property rights, recording that, working with the Immigration Lawyer Network or even National Network is often how we've seen better outcomes over time for families who might even get released later. Not in every case. I think this year what I've observed across the whole country is people are really interested in pushing back against fascism, which makes sense. We just emphasize that when you're recording, that's not the moment to be making a statement about fascism. You're trying to think about what's helpful for someone's case legally long term, not trying to make it about like a public protest in the moment. The protest can happen later, maybe even later than the same day if you can confirm the facts about what happened, but you want to be smart about it, right? Yeah.
I'm curious because you have been doing this work, within different roles, but for years, and that also overlapped with the Biden administration. So coming from that era, what was that like, and how does that compare to now as far as enforcement action and arrests being made?
From my perspective, it's not new. I think with the increase push to deport more, that just pushes people to exploit the gaps that have already existed in the immigration enforcement system that we have in this country. And then maybe it was news for a lot of people that ICE could do very questionable things because there's not a lot of direct oversight in local communities over their actions, right?
So the masks don't faze you?
I mean, it seems like that's what everyone's focused on right now, but it's not like a new thing that they tried to do these things anonymously. Local accountability can be hard, but if you can document things and bring them up, sometimes playing the long game through legal action, then people might be surprised what can happen, but it takes patience. Yeah.
And what is the common kind of arrest within Kansas City and the surrounding areas? Is it typically, I'm going to the restaurant and looking for somebody? Is it the traffic stop? Is it, what does the nature of an arrest seem like these days, typically?
These days, can I compare these days compared to before?
Sure.
Before, probably more common would be like them spending, if they had someone with an actual deportation order on the record and that they have a probable cause to investigate or whatever, they might spend 2 or 3 weeks just following one person, being outside the house every day, watch what the patterns are to figure out when's the easiest time to catch a person, especially if they don't already have a judicial warrant. If they only have an administrative warrant, they might be trying to get this person on public property. So they might figure out what is the pattern of this person, where they go live and work, when is it easy to make an arrest. So that's still what happens now in practice too, but I think when you have the extra push that you see this year where they want to make more arrests faster, even though it's not always possible to do that or practical, I mean, that's where, there was 1 week in February where just HSI in this case seemed to be hitting up just tons of random immigrant-run restaurants throughout Liberty, Missouri. Before the El Pocho raid was noticed, there were just lots of restaurants that were reporting that HSI came by or seemed to be sitting outside the restaurant. So that sense of like just randomly figuring out where could you catch people. But probably what I've heard often though is community reports of someone saying that a loved one was detained and they said, oh, there was a car outside my house every day for a week. I didn't know what it was. And then the family realized later what the car was, right?
And so, they were detained how?
Like waiting for you to leave your house. And then I've heard plenty of reports of just ICE going through neighborhoods early in the morning, like especially last summer, or maybe HSI somewhere between 5 to 8 in the morning, and just looking at people's license plates, seeing if there's something they can find in someone. I've heard of people who otherwise were not standout targets at all suddenly be targeted because it seems like they're just roaming the neighborhood every day for a few weeks to see who. Once there was a bizarre report in a very heavily immigrant neighborhood in KCMO where there was a youth center, and for whatever reason on a Saturday morning they were trying to get in, and this was ICE in this case, they were trying to get into the youth center, and the director just wouldn't let them in because she saw no warrant, turned them away. The interaction didn't last very long, and to this day she does not understand what they were trying to do in her youth center. Just bizarre reports like that you'll hear at times.
That's profound to me because, one of the things Trump did was reverse course on a Biden-era policy of not going to churches, schools, places where there was this line of, we're not going to cross that. I mean, how often have you, that's one example, but have there been other cases around schools or churches or community-centered places?
Can I make a clarification first?
Please.
So the sanctuary, the so-called sanctuary, or sensitive locations memo, it wasn't really a Biden. They did that in Trump 1.0. They've been doing that for a long time, where they had that kind of sensitive locations memo, where they wouldn't go to churches and schools and so on. And at the beginning of this year they took away that memo, but it was always like an internal policy or even a memo. It wasn't like some externally imposed thing.
Okay.
And we always knew like they could change that whenever. It was, we all wondered when were they going to. So it's almost like all that change at the beginning of the year was they removed an internal inhibition, saying if we felt like trying to go onto a school's property or a hospital or so on, we might try to do it if we wanted to make an arrest. But it doesn't change the fact, and they know this too, that a lot of these places still are private property. If you don't have a judicial warrant, if no one allows you to enter the space, you can't just claim, you can't force your way in for no reason. There's a Fourth Amendment protection against unfair searches and seizures, right, in the end.
The gist from your perspective is it's not new. I guess a follow-up question to that is, I mean, has it increased at all from?
Oh, yeah. I would definitely say increase, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah, it feels more intense, but not completely unmanageable if more people in the community are now aware of the issue and just know the rights and really look out for each other as neighbors. And, you know, don't go too far, but just know what you're empowered to do according to your First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights, and how do you support someone's legal case. Yeah.
How much hope do you hold out for the U.S. immigration system?
Sorry, I'm laughing at the word system. Like, what is the system? There is a new hope for me. I lost hope in the U.S. immigration system a long time ago when I realized that there actually is barely a system, and the immigration lawyers will tell you like it's a convoluted mess and it's so confusing. And there's never been a time in the country's history, maybe contrary to popular perception, that we never have like sat down as a country and actually developed a logical immigration system that is functional for what we see today from the ground up. So it's just all a hodgepodge of different immigration policies and preferences that got slapped on between either the president's preferences of how to do enforcement or the Congress's preferences and policy over the past 100 years. It's all such a hodgepodge. None of it makes sense. So it really does not. So the hope I have right now is I think more people around the country are seeing how many big holes we've had in this immigration system this whole time. And I think if people see that, you wondered, can we get to the point where we just finally agree on some basic common sense reform at the congressional level? Because there's so many things that I think are non-controversial points. If people saw, here's how the immigration system works in practice, wouldn't it make sense to fix this hole and that hole and this hole? You know, I know for some people it might sound like a big, a dream that might sound too good to come true, but to me it just sounds like it's practical. The common issue with immigration enforcement right now is that they don't answer to anyone besides the head of the Department of the head of DHS or the President of the United States. So there's no local community accountability if you see abuses. So just having a different form of immigration enforcement that actually has accountability to local communities could go a long way to having better balance in how we conduct immigration enforcement in the future. You know.